Welcome to Chapter 4b. We're going to talk about more projective techniques that are very useful in marketing research. Some of them require a lot of thought and effort. First is laddering. Okay, laddering is usually done through a series of directed probes with the interviewer politely saying, "Why is that important to you? Why is that important?" And so you're trying to delve down into what this from attributes, features of the product to consequences. What do those mean for the customer? And then deeply, what are the values that those represent or are connected to? So an example here would be in the fast-moving consumer packaged goods category, potato chips. So the interviewer would ask, what makes these potato chips special? And the response is the barbecued flavoring. That's an attribute. Why is that important? Well, it tastes good. That's an attribute. Why is that important? Well, if they taste good, I eat fewer chips. That's a consequence. Why is that important? Well, I won't get fat. That's a consequence. Then why is that important? It's my value. It's self-esteem. I feel better about myself. Okay, so that's the value. So that's the series here. You want to establish rapport, be part of an interview. It's an important part. Don't judge the responses and get the focus on the respondent, not the product. And, there's these other parts of laddering that can be done. So triadic sorting of brands. So how are these two brands alike yet different from a third? And then this preference consumption difference. Why is one brand most preferred? And then differences by occasion. You'd set up an occasion and then ask which brand is chosen. So it's a party to celebrate graduating from college. What brand would be there for the potato chips? The respondent doesn't know the answer. That's one of the problems. So sometimes these laddering might not actually go to their complete depth. And then the issues might become too sensitive. So that's a problem too. So they're not foolproof, the laddering technique, but they can, with respondents that are, I guess, in touch with their attributes, consequences, and values, they can be quite valuable in revealing for the researchers. So you want to evoke the situational context. When was the last time you used this brand? And then present the absence of an object. What would you have used if you hadn't have had access to this brand? And then the negative laddering would be, why wouldn't you buy this type of brand? Okay. It can be age regression contrast. Is there a difference in your use of this brand to a couple of years ago? A third person probe. Why do you think this brand is used by others? And then redirecting techniques, communications check, just have silence, or then come back and say, let me see if I understand what you're saying. What do you mean by blank? And then you'd classify our responses into the three basic ACV levels, come up with some master codes, maybe a summary score matrix, a hierarchical value map, showing which values seem to override other values. Now, here's a comic strip that shows maybe some of the limitations of laddering. That you start off with a salty and crunchy potato chip. It goes to feeling full, and then sharing, family, happiness, finally world peace. And the researcher is asking, I think we can go higher. Okay, so there are maybe some limitations to laddering techniques. ZMET is the Zaltman metaphor elicitation technique. And this is Jerry Zaltman himself. He had a very prosperous career at the university, mostly at the University of Pittsburgh, and even there's a colleague of Linda Price, who's on the faculty of the University of Wyoming. He came up with this ZMET protocol, so Zaltman metaphor elicitation technique. And the reason to do this was see if a technique could be used to bring to top of mind what is maybe deep in the mind of consumers. And so some of the premise of this, or some assumptions, is that marketing research needs help in actually conveying or bringing out the thoughts and feelings of customers. And sometimes marketing research techniques like surveys, for example, might get in the way of actually doing that. So the basic premises is that social communication, most of it is nonverbal. Thoughts occur as feelings, metaphors, saying or stating one thing in terms of another. These are central to cognition and thinking. Cognition is grounded in embodied experience, and then deep structures of thought can be accessed. And the meaning of a thought is shaped by its association to others' thoughts. They're connected. And then reason, emotion, experience commingle. So a metaphor, this is a vehicle for moving tacit knowledge up to explicit knowledge. So tacit knowledge has to do with the context and deep meaning for information or knowledge, and then making it explicit so that it can be examined and understood more directly. So thoughts are mostly images, not words, and metaphors are the ways our minds deal with images and make meaning out of them. So when Elvis Presley sang "You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog" crying all the time, he was putting a girlfriend in terms of something else, and that's a hound dog crying all the time. So deep metaphors, mental structures that organize and structures our thought. It's believed that these are hardwired in our minds as human beings, and that metaphors are the most basic stories that humans understand. The term metaphor means to transfer. So it's stories, metaphors, subconsciously encode complex ideas. So the steps in a ZMET research project would be these. You're trying to get after storytelling, having you're giving actually photo elicitation. I've done this, you give a disposable camera to customers. Probably now you would ask them to use their smartphone to do this, and then have those photos transferred to you. But you've given them assignment, probably given them a week, maybe 10 days to do it. And it might be capture your ultimate energy experience if your client was an electrical utility company. If your client was a potato chip brand, it would be relate your ultimate salty snack experience. And so in that way, there's an assignment, and you encourage your informants to go outdoors, even travel. If they're traveling, do it when they're in Denver, or just make it part of their life. But they'll be thinking about the assignment, and then when they're in the proper setting, they'll take the photos of things that represent this ultimate energy experience, or ultimate salty snack experience, or ultimate party at home with friends experience. So then you would ask, what were the missed images? Describe the pictures that got away, or you just didn't have the chance to capture them. What photos would you have taken if you were able to do that? And then you would have a sorting task. When you have disposable cameras, you can get the pictures printed off. And when your informant gives you the images from the phone, you'd have to print those off too to do the sorting task. But then that would help identify the constructs that are relevant for the customer. Then you would do this construct elicitation. Construct is an idea that represents maybe constituent parts, or a set of elements that are connected to the idea. And then you would select 3 pictures at random, and then you'd ask how these 2 pictures are similar yet different from a third. And you'd go through the stack of photos that way. And then you would ask the informant to identify or present the most representative picture based on the assigned topic. And then you'd go through and say, okay, what is the opposite image? Okay, what would the opposite image of this ultimate experience be? And then you'd probe for sensory images. What does and does not describe the concept ultimate snack experience, salty snack experience, in terms of color, emotion, sound, smell, taste, touch? And then you try to develop this mental map So you'd have cards printed with constructs by the customer, and the customer would then lay them out, and then the customer would walk you through that map. And then finally, a summary image could be done digitally at a laptop computer, or it could be done with magazines and a stack of those. Have the informant go through, tear out or cut out images from the magazines, and then put them on a poster board, and then have them, the informant, explain those images and what the arrangement of them means. So that consensus map is what I just described here. And usually you get 20 or 30 constructs in the map. 80% of the constructs are mentioned by the customers, are included in that map. And that would be for your overall map for all the informants that you're working with there. And then you're trying to understand the significance between the relationships that are on that consensus map. I was very pleased that past students of mine in the Master's of Science and Marketing Research program at the University of Texas at Arlington were at Frito-Lay headquarters, and they were asked to give a presentation on the ZMET technique, which they learned in my class. So it was the practitioners, it was a new technique, and our students had learned it, and they were able to convey it to these professionals at Frito-Lay. You can come up with deep metaphors. If it was Pacific Gas and Electric as a client, it might be containers or safe havens or buildings that were part of this ultimate energy experience, nature, people, and social relationships. So energy allowed people to be together and relate to each other in a very affirming and positive way. Could also be creation. With energy, you could create. Others, Zaltman reports that there are a set of deep metaphors that are common. They recur in research projects. So one is physical orientation, so represents motion or movement. Balance comes up in almost every project and might be representing fight versus flight. A journey might be represented with time. Transformation, social relationships, the container, the connection or linkage. The force could be a physical force. Nature might represent the ideal. And then resource could be knowledge and knowing. So the balance metaphor is a deep one. It comes up in every study and really, can be represented in kind of moral balance, justice. Could be a surface metaphor, like I overindulged and I pay for it. It also can come up with I eat too much or disgust or low self-esteem. The balance metaphor is really one of the important things that we do is early in life. We stand upright and walk. So that takes balance. So I think in an embodied sense, although we're not aware of it now as adults, that's an important task that our bodies and minds do for us. They allow us to move upright, and it takes balance to do that. And so mentally or in a deep way, we're always coming back to that and affirming that we are in balance as we move forward in life. Now, the consensus map, here's one from somebody that's probably an engineer, okay? It's top down, hierarchical, escapism and convenience, and you see the nodes that go very highly ordered there. And that was done in the software program called In Vivo, okay? And so those models can readily be done and changed and manipulated there. Another consensus map, more complex, a lot of connections, kind of wild looking. This was done for a electric utility in Texas, and it had been focused on the ultimate energy experience. And here you see that, where to start. It's maybe necessities here. That might be a starting place. Then you get to the environment, quality of life. But then you have maybe the utilities are producing innovation and reliableness. Sleekness, I think, came up. Their response to power outages, pair teams or recovery teams were almost like racehorses. So that is some of the metaphors that are done and valuable, particularly for advertising and communicating the benefits of a brand as an electric utility brand. Here it would be Rocky Mountain Power in the Western United States. Here's a consistency map done on poster board. This was done for the ultimate recreational facility experience. It was done for Campus Rec. And again, there's order to this, so it doesn't have to be that way. The photos can be arranged even kind of in a haphazard way if it has meaning to the informants that create it. You do see up at the top, there is kind of some overlay here and looks like a gingerbread person kind of at an angle. So we are kind of getting some less linearity here. But we do see, sports that are done here and the bodies maybe that result from going to the gym, the basketballs that are played here, but and the competitiveness that is there. But then, we see these images of couples in intimate proximity to each other, which would allow the sponsors for the project to reflect on that and understand, perhaps at campus rec facilities, something related to these human endeavors are somehow connected with that. And that can be very valuable for the sponsors of the study. Well, that concludes our talk on more projective techniques. We look forward to future times together here. We'll be looking at quantitative methods next. Thank you.